Russia's getting yet more help from North Korea in its ongoing invasion of Ukraine.
And as Russia steps up its attacks on Ukraine, the Kremlin is once again seeking help from North Korea. South Korean intelligence reports that the country has already sent Russian weapons and North Korean troops could soon be sent to the front line.
The authorities of North Korea have, for the first time, officially confirmed that the country's troops took part in combat against Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk region. State media declared a victory there and described the North Korean soldiers involved in the fighting as heroic. The official acknowledgement came after Russian President Vladimir Putin also praised the North Korean troops for their contribution to the theater of war. In a statement published on the Kremlin's website, he said that Moscow's Korean friends fought with honor and valor, covering themselves in unfading glory. The Russian people will never forget the heroism of the Korean Special Forces, Putin added. We will always honor the Korean heroes who gave their lives for Russia and for our shared freedom, alongside their Russian comrades-in-arms. In a statement published by North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency, or KCNA, the country's Central Military Commission confirmed the participation of its troops in Russia's operation to expel Ukrainian forces from Kursk. In the same KCNA statement, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called the soldiers who fought in the Kursk region heroes who fought for justice. Kim added that a monument to the Kursk continent would be erected in Pyongyang. The homeland must forever preserve the memory of the souls of soldiers who fought to protect its great honor, and take significant state measures to ensure special and prioritized care for the families of the brave troops who participated in the war, Kim continued. According to assessments by Ukraine-linked governments, the North Korean units engaged in the battles near Kursk suffered losses rapidly. British intelligence estimated that by March, around 5,000 North Korean troops deployed to fight Ukraine had been killed or wounded, with approximately one-third believed to have died. Soon after their arrival in the combat zone, it became clear that North Korean forces were poorly prepared for modern warfare. Ukrainian military personnel noted that DPRK soldiers became easy targets for Ukrainian kamikaze drones. These combat drones, widely used on this front, were a deadly novelty for the Koreans. The initial encounters revealed a grim picture. North Korean fighters simply didn't know how to defend themselves against drones. Footage from Ukrainian UAVs shows them initially just watching drones flying overhead, unable to comprehend what they were. Once they realized the threat, they panicked, attempting to shoot them down with rifles or even swat them with rifle stocks before fleeing across open ground, only to be systematically eliminated by aerial strikes. In one episode in late 2024, a Ukrainian drone unit reportedly wiped out about 50 North Korean soldiers who vainly tried to escape an attack, lying under trees or using the cover of night. But these measures didn't save them from high-precision death from above. In effect, at the beginning of their deployment in Ukraine, DPRK forces paid with their lives for a lack of experience and tactical skill. Ukrainian kamikaze drone strikes on enemy troop concentrations proved particularly devastating. North Korean units were accustomed to moving in large groups, which made them highly visible targets under constant aerial surveillance. According to Ukrainian troops, the greatest losses suffered by the Kim soldiers came from kamikaze drones. In desperation, they began taking ill-considered measures to survive. For example, during the winter of 2024-25, in the village of Makhnivka in the Kursk region, North Korean soldiers were observed evicting an elderly Russian couple from their home and occupying it themselves, hoping to hide from Ukrainian drones under the roof. Video footage clearly shows this evacuation of civilians. DPRK troops, fearing a drone strike, forced the two Russian pensioners out into the cold to use their house as shelter. Such cases point to the confusion and lack of understanding among North Korean forces about how to operate under conditions of modern high-precision warfare. In addition, the North Korean contingent encountered other problems. A sharp language and cultural barrier existed between the allies. Russian officers complained that initial interaction with DPRK units was extremely difficult. Soldiers didn't understand orders or radio communications in Russian. A crash course consisting of 100 essential Russian military phrases, which was hastily organized for the Koreans, produced almost no results. This led to a friendly fire incident. In one engagement, due to miscommunication, North Korean troops opened fire and killed 8 Russian soldiers. The incident further strained battlefield relations and forced the command to search for better coordination methods. Losses within the North Korean group during the battles of the Kursk region were significant. According to Western intelligence, out of the approximately 11,000 DPRK soldiers deployed, around 4,000 were killed or wounded during the campaign. British intelligence estimates the total non-combat losses, killed, wounded, and missing at more than 6,000, over half of the initial contingent. Such staggering figures reflect both the brutality of the fighting and the inadequate preparedness of these troops for such an intense war. Unsurprisingly, there were reports of some choosing to surrender rather than die. There were documented instances of North Korean soldiers being captured by Ukrainian forces, later interrogated on camera, providing valuable testimony about their mission. It's worth noting that official Pyongyang refused to include such prisoners in exchange lists, unwilling to acknowledge their presence in the war. Despite the heavy losses, Moscow and Pyongyang appear intent on expanding their cooperation. In June to July 2025, troubling signals began to emerge about preparations for a new large DPRK contingent to be sent to the Russia-Ukraine front. According to Ukrainian military intelligence, North Korea is preparing to deploy an additional 25,000 to 30,000 troops, on top of the approximately 11,000 who had already participated. This effectively amounts to tripling the scale of North Korean intervention. These new units may arrive within the coming months and are expected to be engaged in combat operations on occupied Ukrainian territories, including planned large-scale offensive operations by Russia. Specific timing has been indicated: August 2025. According to Western and Ukrainian officials, the Kremlin's planning a new major offensive for that period, having assembled reserves after the failures of the previous winter. North Korean troops may serve as fresh meat for this offensive, compensating for Russian losses and boosting assault capacity. Ukrainian intelligence notes that Russia has already prepared the logistics to receive these forces. Military transport aircraft have been retrofitted to carry DPRK soldiers across Siberia, and satellite imagery has identified the same cargo ships that previously delivered North Korean troops, now docked at the port of Nakhodka in the Russian Far East. Such indirect evidence suggests that supply routes for North Korean manpower into Russia are once again active. Officially, Pyongyang still does not confirm the deployment of its troops abroad. However, the regime's rhetoric is becoming increasingly aggressive. In July 2025, during the visit of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to North Korea, Kim Jong-un publicly declared that he would fully support all of Moscow's actions in the war against Ukraine. This effectively serves as a green light for any military assistance the Kremlin may request. Notably, earlier on June 17, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu visited Pyongyang and announced that North Korea would send 1,000 sappers and 5,000 military construction workers to assist in demining and rebuilding destroyed infrastructure in the Kursk region. This may be only the tip of the iceberg of a broader agreement. Analysts suggest that Pyongyang may send its forces in waves, initially smaller specialized groups, engineers, logistics, followed by main combat units numbering in the tens of thousands. A scenario in which an additional 30,000 North Korean troops enter the war poses a serious challenge for Ukraine. These forces are likely to be used as assault units on the most intense sections of the front line. According to the Ukrainian command, Russia is currently concentrated around 110,000 of its soldiers in the eastern direction, specifically in the Pokrovsk area of Donetsk region, in preparation for a new offensive. The addition of a North Korean contingent could serve as the reserve force attempting to break through Ukrainian defenses during this August offensive. It's known that Moscow will provide the Koreans with everything they need: heavy weapons, equipment, ammunition, integrating them into its military structure. Formally, the North Korean units may operate under Russian flags and command posts. Thus, Ukrainian forces will likely be facing not just scattered groups of exotic fighters from Asia, but full battalions and brigades composed of DPRK troops fighting side by side with Russians. The appearance of the North Korean army in the war against Ukraine is unprecedented in modern history. The regime of Kim Jong-un, one of the most isolated in the world, has effectively entered the war on Russia's side, providing not only weapons but also manpower. This indicates the formation of a new military political alliance of totalitarian regimes united against Ukraine and, more broadly, against the West. For Moscow, involving the North Koreans is, on one hand, a sign of desperation and resource shortages, and on the other, a way to replenish its army with fresh soldiers. For Ukraine, the arrival of a new enemy is an additional challenge, but not a catastrophe. The previous experience of fighting DPRK forces has shown that they could be defeated, especially when holding a technological edge and intelligence on their tactics. Ukrainian defenders have already obtained valuable captured data on the strengths and weaknesses of the Korean units. It's been established, for instance, that North Koreans remain heavily dependent on Russian command, lack initiative at lower ranks, and are vulnerable to precision weaponry. Still, this enemy must not be underestimated. They're now battle-tested soldiers who have adapted to the realities of war. Moreover, Pyongyang supplies Moscow not only with troops. According to the UN, in 2024, North Korea transferred at least 100 ballistic missiles and 9 million artillery shells to Russia, blatantly violating sanctions. Thus, Russia receives comprehensive support from the DPRK, helping it sustain its aggression. The approach of August 2025 raises many questions. If a 30,000-strong North Korean contingent does indeed appear on the battlefield, it'll mark a new phase in the internationalization of the conflict. Ukrainian soldiers are already jokingly referring to the scenario as a remake of the Korean War, only this time on Ukrainian soil. But there's also a historical irony here. 70 years ago, Soviet pilots fought in the skies over Korea disguised as locals. Now, Korean soldiers are fighting in Europe under the guise of Russians. The lesson for the world is clear. Aggressive regimes are willing to unite and undermine international security to serve their own ambitions. Ukraine, for its part, continues to show its readiness to resist any invader, whether it be a Wagner mercenary, a Buryat soldier, or a DPRK commando. Thank you, friends, for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest events. This material was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.